Welcome to the Productivity Podcast. Diane World, Marketing and Insights Director, MRI Springboard, is back for our monthly check-in. Hi Di, how you doing?
I'm good, thanks, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, good, thanks. So we're in June, July now, I think, aren't we, from our looking at the data, and we've got a record breaker, haven't we?
We have, but not really for the right reasons, which is a bit of a pity. Yes, July was interesting month. So what normally happens in the year is that footfall increases steadily across the summer period, peaking in August and then dropping back down as the children go back to school. What we saw this year was actually for the first time since we started publishing our data back in 2009 was that footfall in July was lower than in June. And it wasn't lower by much, by 0.3%, but it's the first time that has happened. And the average rise from June to July over the decade from 2019 is 3.4%. So you can see the delta between what we were recording this year and what we record on a normal year.
So kind of a 3.7% swing to the average. And I think, is this the signs of people putting the brakes on? I know the weather was pretty awful, but interest rates continue to rise. And as I read the paper again over the weekend, it's predicted it's probably going to go up again before it comes down. So is this the point where people are seeing this as a longer term issue rather than we'll just kind of ride it out and hope it goes away?
I think it is. In previous months, we haven't really seen this impact or any impact on footfall particularly. We've seen increases month to month. Things have been fairly positive because a lot of people, of course, have got fixed rate mortgages. And, of course, some of those are starting to come to an end in July and having to renegotiate. And I think the reality is hitting home. So, I mean, in the previous 3 months, we saw steady month-on-month increases, and they averaged 4% across the previous 3 months. In July, we saw this 0.3% drop, the first since March. So I do believe that some of that is definitely due to interest rate rises and people feeling the need to rein back spending. At the same time, of course, the weather is important for footfall, as we know. And, having a lot of rainy days in July isn't great for retail. So it's the cumulative impact of both of those things.
Okay. So does that play out across, is it a generally below across the whole week? Because I know we talked about weekends and Saturdays were on the rise again and have grown in importance, but does June to July, is it just flat across all days or is there a particular trend?
Well, let's start with the different types of shopping destinations. So the driver of that drop was high streets last month. So there were increases in retail parks and shopping centres, but even those increases were lower than the increases we would normally see from June to July. So all of the decline in retail destinations was from high streets. So that was a decline of 1.7% in high streets. So it was very much, and you could see, and that was really gave us that information about the rain. It was clearly the rain influencing footfall. So that was the starting point. And then, of course, that does impact weekdays and weekends. Weekdays are sort of, important days, and some of the plans can't be changed. And weekends tend to be more discretionary. So in July, in high streets, we saw a rise during weekdays of 1.8%. Good, but compared to last year. But in weekend, it was a drop of 1.2%. So we could see that actually, it did impact the weekend more, and really, that is sort of what you would expect. People make the choice not to go out at the weekend, particularly when it's raining. And if they don't have much money either, that's what they sacrifice.
It would kind of make sense with the kids being off as well, I suppose, that people would spread some of that activity across the week rather than the weekend. Yeah. So not great record-breaking news, as you're saying. It'll be interesting to see how we move from July into August, if that trend continues or if it was a blip. Where's this all kind of starting to play out in terms of things like Black Friday and Christmas? I know we've touched on it in a couple of the other episodes, but are we heading for, as a consumer, a great Black Friday with lots of deals because people need to stimulate, or actually are people going to have less good deals for us and kind of play it till Christmas? It's going to be an interesting time.
It is going to be really interesting because it depends on stock levels and inventory. If they haven't got enough stock, they're going to keep prices high because it's a supply demand issue, isn't it? Black Friday will come into play, of course it will. Every year we say, will it be as big as last year? It always is. And it's always, it's a market share thing for many retailers, isn't it? It's about getting that shopper early. And for shoppers, it's about spreading the spend across a longer period of time so they're not rammed up against it in December, trying to budget a little bit easier. Also, for those consumers whose fixed rate mortgages don't end until late in the year or possibly early 2024, they're going to want to get some bargains but spread that spend and do it early. So it will impact, but I think what we are going to see is an impact on footfall over Christmas and Black Friday anyway. The less people spend, the fewer people there are on the street, the less they spend. So, it's interesting because when the sales numbers come out from the ONS, I'm never surprised because I know roughly what they're going to be because I've got the early indicator of footfall to tell me. 75% of all spend, retail spend, is in store. So, and the data we have at MRI software is such a huge data lake that it's not going to lie. And so, I have a really good indicator of what's going to be in spend numbers. So it's never a surprise. So inevitably, what will happen is we'll make fewer trips. We'll be more discerning about the trips we make. We'll be more careful when we make those trips about what we spend. We'll probably be more focused about what we buy. And so therefore, footfall won't necessarily decline, but we won't see as big uplifts as perhaps we might, and spend will be impacted.
So it's going to go one way or the other, isn't it? Potentially some amazing bargains, or if, as you say, stock's in short supply, then people are going to hold their nerve, and if you want it, you're going to have to pay the going rate for it, because it kind of comes back full circle, really, because again, petrol prices are starting to rise. I think unleaded by us has gone up by 5 or 6p in the last week again. So there's this storm brewing, and I think people are putting the brakes on, but there's other bits which are kind of in the air, which are going to have an impact for lots of people, especially with that mortgage rate kind of cliff that you talked about over the next 3, 6, 9 months. So it's going to be an interesting time, I think, and as we've seen and talked about before, there's some retailers, unfortunately, that are dropping off. But I assume that the strong will survive, and as ever, there'll be more and more consolidation in the market.
Absolutely, and often people, when a Wilko, where a retailer like Wilko goes, it's the market, it's the demise of the high street. It's not necessarily that at all, because the problems at Wilko have been brewing for a long time.
Yeah.
And it's just highlighted by the situation we're in, because actually, if you think about it, logically, with less money to spend, you'd think discounters would actually be in greater demand, which of course they are, because people want bargains, but it's about their overhead and their gearing and their debt, all those internal issues that have just come out to play now. And of course, as interest rates go up and they've got a lot of gearing, it will cost them more to pay off their debt, so their cash flow will be impacted. So the winners will survive, and in any market other than the greatest boom economy, it's a tough environment for retailers. It's competitive, and there's always going to be another retailer who's more efficient and better at what they do than perhaps another retailer. So that should create better performance for retailers and therefore a better offer for consumers.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the unfortunate things that will go. This climate at the moment sped it up. It's not the cause of it. They were there before, and unfortunately it's come to a head. Hopefully someone comes and rescues them, because I'm sure there's still some great people there and all those people in the stores that don't know what's going on. But it's not now that's been the issue. This has brought it to a conclusion, hasn't it?
Absolutely. These things are a long time coming, really, and there have been rumours about it for a fair while. And you can look at some of the stores that Wilko occupy; they're very large, they're in high rented locations, whereas the competitors are mostly out of town. We're paying lower rents per square foot, so these things come home to roost, unfortunately.
Absolutely, and probably worth just touching on hospitality. So clearly Christmas parties is going to be an absolutely key time for them. I'm sure there's some quite nervous business owners in that sector wondering if people have parties, if there'll be money being spent, if that's going to pan out, because that's an industry that's still rebounding from the whole lockdown and COVID piece.
It is. It's going to be really interesting this Christmas, actually, for hospitality. And I mean, it's interesting anyway for hospitality because, of course, everything has severe peaks and troughs for hospitality, particularly in city centres with hybrid working. There's lots of stories about sandwich shops and coffee shops not opening on a Monday, or not serving lunch but serving dinner, or not serving dinner. And because so many people work at home on certain days, I went into London on Friday and it was so quiet. It was like a Sunday early morning on a Friday. And so, of course, this is a complete change to how it used to be. So that is going to take a long time to really unravel and sort itself out. Regarding Christmas parties, I think it will really depend on people's economic position as to whether they want to participate in that. The hybrid working will have an impact, because do you come into the office for a Christmas party, or do you do something a little bit more local, or not at all? So I think that has changed the nature of it. But then there will be some people saying, no, we want a big Christmas party because we don't see each other very much anymore. So I think it will be a half and half situation.
Yeah, and you forget how much that has an impact in fashion as well, because people typically buy a new dress, new trousers, shirt for all that.
Absolutely.
So it's not just the going out and the travelling. There's an impact in retail as well in terms of that kind of bounce they get. So I think we've said it on quite a few of these. It's interesting times. Almost we see the trends, but those month to month changes more difficult to predict. And as we get into kind of the choppy waters of these rate rises, mortgages ending, weather really unstable for the time of year, and then Christmas, Black Friday, it's going to be fascinating to see how it plays out towards the end of the year.
Yeah, it will be. Every year is interesting, but particularly this what I call the post-COVID or post-pandemic era, we're just feeling our way into a new landscape, really. And we've only had a couple of years, and these have really been post-COVID recoveries. So we haven't got that hard data set of actually we know for sure what this landscape looks like. So it's just sort of feeling our way right now.
Yeah, I think the one thing for certain is that it's change is a constant now, isn't it? There's no norm other than the fact that it's just different.
No, absolutely.
Brilliant. So we'll pause there. Record-breaking month for all the wrong reasons, unfortunately. But let's stick with it. Hopefully, there's a bit more of the yellow stuff in the sky in the next month, which brings us all out a little bit. Clearly, there'll be people going on their holidays or not going on holidays because of some of the economic stuff. So I don't think it's all doom and gloom. But fingers crossed, we maybe break a few records the other way as we head into the winter months.
Yeah, that would be great, wouldn't it? Just to have a little bit of a boost.
Absolutely. Thanks, Di. I'll catch you next month.
Thanks, Simon.